And hello everyone, welcome to another episode of PaintCast. I am your host, Ashton, with Red Modeling Paint, also known sometimes on the internet as Red Finger. Welcome to the only show on the internet that is going to show you in real time with no editing how to paint. Customizing your paint scheme, customizing your techniques to the specific things that you feel like you need to work on. Glad to have you guys here today, and thanks for being here. We're going to be working on today, you'll notice the title of this stream is Cygnar Centurion, so we're going to be working a little bit on a Cygnar Centurion a little bit. Show that to you guys right there. We're working on this a bit. Also, we're working on finishing up Kane here. He's about 95% done. Just a few small things left to do on him real fast that I'm going to show Chris before we move on to the Centurion. Also of interest that we're going to be doing today, I'm going to be working on a little bit of airbrushing and showing just a little bit of that, kind of a first live dry run of my first airbrushing camera. So want to take a minute though and talk about kind of upcoming stuff, upcoming broadcasts. Okay, for the rest of April I have 3 official scheduled paint casts. On the 14th, which is Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, I'm going to be doing a paint cast. On the 25th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, that's a Saturday, I will be doing a paint cast. And on the 30th at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, I'm going to be doing a paint cast. So those are the rest of my scheduled ones for the month. But I will be doing periodic ones in between as I'm working on projects here at home, different commissions and things like that. So for the 14th, for that one coming up, what I'm going to be working on that night, we're going to be working on some cricks. I'm going to be talking about using an airbrush to paint miniatures. I'm probably going to be working on Deathjack, and he's going to be painted in purple. So that one should be pretty cool. Also, one of those hours that night too will be more of the Cephalix Army. On the 25th of April, that paint cast is going to focus on two-brush blending, and specifically two-brush blending over large surfaces as I go to work on a Cygnar Light Warjack, a Charger. And we'll be doing that one in a standard paint scheme. On the 30th, I believe I'm going to be working on Bradagus, if I remember right. That's also going to be done in purple as well, and focusing on using an airbrush for blocking in your highlights and your shades. So that should be a fun one. What's upcoming in May, there'll be of course more of the Cephalix Army the rest of April and maybe a little bit into May. Mold will be worked on periodically here. May we're going to have Wrath of Kings. I'm going to be doing a Wrath of Kings demo on painting one of those miniatures up. That's going to be pretty cool. So we've got some good stuff coming up, and I'm excited to work with you guys and have you guys be a part of this. To those of you catching this broadcast after the fact on YouTube, make sure and email your questions to me, redmodeling@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to answer those questions during my broadcasts. Usually I take the last few minutes of each broadcast to address specific questions that viewers have or people from the chat room have. So make sure and send those my way. Also, if you're interested in getting your own paint cast done, I am still taking requests for these tutorial videos. Right now I'm booked out until about June, mid-June. So if you are interested in getting that done, make sure to head over to my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Red Modeling Paint, and click on the link there under Notes, and it will take you to a description of how this process works. Or you can just email me at redmodeling@gmail.com. So let's get to work. Let's get some stuff done. One thing I will be doing moving forward when I post these videos up on YouTube is I'm going to be including on the comments section at the bottom a little blurb of the breakdown of the video, what was covered at what parts. So that way people who are just wanting to watch something on two-brush blending or whatever, they can kind of fast forward to that section and just focus on that. So Chris, let's get going on Kane here and get him finished up. He is just about done. You'll notice last time what we were working on with him was the flesh tones, okay? On the face, we were working on the white on the inside of the cloak. I've gone ahead and painted the white on the top of his collar here, and blocked in all the metals as well as added the trim to his breastplate on the armor there, the gold trim. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to apply a wash to the metal areas. We're going for a clean tabletop look here, so I'm going to darken those up and pick up those details, and that'll probably be it for Kane as far as what I'm going to demonstrate in video. For his base, if you're wanting me to show you how I'll paint the base up, make sure and shoot me an email and let me know, and I can do a quick one for you on that. But otherwise, you know, he's looking pretty much done at this point as far as what we're looking for is, you know, tabletop quality. So P3 armor wash is what I'm using here, applied to my wet palette, and we're just going to start applying it liberally to all the metal areas, and that's going to be how we'll pick out the detail and shading on these metal areas. And what you can do after the fact, after this wash is dried, is you can go back in with cold steel, okay, or Quicksilver, and pick out some of these details just to add a little more contrast to the area. I'm going to kind of move through the rest of Kane here fairly quick because I want to have most of our time today be on the Centurion and getting that done. I know you've been anxious for him, and frankly I've been anxious to get him done as well. For those of you that have been following me on Facebook, you know a little bit about some of the problems I've been experiencing the last week or so with my internet service provider. Let me tell you that my levels of rage and frustration have been at epic proportions lately dealing with them. They continue to tell me that they don't throttle their internet connection, but yet in the service agreement that I sign, it says that they reserve the right to basically do that. And I can't get a hold of anyone over there at my internet service provider to give me a straight answer. So it's been a frustrating experience, to say the least. I think the reason why I'm able to stream today, to be quite honest with you, is because it's a new billing cycle, and the data plan is refreshed for the month, so to speak, so I don't have to, it's the beginning of the month, and there's no usage for them to base my future usage on as far as throttling goes. So anyway, technician's coming on Monday, and he's going to be getting an earful from me, so I'll keep you guys updated on how that goes. Also, Chris, one thing that I'm going to change to the paint recipes, when we first sat down and did Iris, or when we first started Kane, excuse me, we talked about for the gold color using, I believe it was Rulic gold or solid gold for the gold trim or gold pieces on the Cygnar Army, and I actually would like to amend that and make a suggestion to you if I can. Let me show you what I got here as we wrap up with Kane. On the Centurion body that I showed you, that color, that gold color that you see there, is from scale 75. It's called Viking Gold. Okay, I would really recommend this gold as opposed to the Rulic gold. If you take a look at Rulic gold, you can see they're very similar colors. This is just a touch darker, but we can very easily lighten it up. The reason why I'm recommending the scale 75 over the P3 is the quality. The coverage is amazing. The coverage is fantastic. That gold that you're seeing there right now, that's a single coat coverage. Okay, I mean, obviously, if you look right here, you can see there is some cleanup that needs to happen, but the way that this applies is so smooth, and it's such a beautiful color, and it's so easy to work with that I'm really going to recommend that you pick that up. The Viking Gold does not come in an individual bottle. I believe you can, if you maybe look around on eBay or something like that, you might be able to pick it up, but you'll have to buy the Scale 75 Gold Alchemy set. Okay, and it's got the whole range of golds in it, plus some tinted metallic colors for adjusting the gold a little bit. And when we get to the gold portion of painting on this, I'll explain some of that in some more detail to you. But you know, in the meantime, I'd really recommend that product. It's a fantastic product, and it does a great job of coverage. And it's a good-looking gold. It goes really well with the teal color that we've been working with, and it goes really well with also the silver colors that we're using as well. So let's get on with getting this bad boy painted. We're going to be using two-brush blending to paint this, okay? And as we've talked about on previous videos and email conversations, you want to have a very clean-looking army, Cygnar army. And so one of the ways that we can accomplish that cleanliness is minimum contrast. We want to keep the contrast to a minimum, so we want to make sure the color blends are really smooth, okay, and we're not going too bright and we're not going too dark. So where we'll start at is getting my dry palette together, because when we're two brush blending, we don't want to use a wet palette, we want to use a dry palette. Get your two brush blending brushes ready to go. Make sure your blending brush is moistened. Make sure your application brush is ready to go. Check out, some people are asking in chat where to get the Scale 75 paints. eBay is where I've seen them, and the other place that I've seen them is Hangar 18 Miniatures. They can thank me later for the plug. So the thing is, Chris, when we're working on large areas like this, okay, you want to, just like we talked about last week with the white, two-brush blending the white, you want to build that color up. You don't want to try and go for the darkest shadow all at once, okay? And the other thing you might find that you have to do when you're working in large areas like this is that you'll have to come back after you've added the shadow and maybe add a glaze or two of the base color, so that you can see, so you can kind of tone it down a little bit and soften it up. So where we're going to start at, the idea is we're kind of going to want, as you look at it from the camera directly on, we kind of want this outside edge and this outside edge here to have the shadow, and as it comes up, it'll come to the top and highlight. Okay, so the idea is lightest in the center, okay, and then shadow on the sides. And since the Centurion is going to be kind of looking at you like this area is going to be in the foreground. This top area back here is going to be in the background or further away. So what we want to try and do as we're adding the shadows along the side is kind of pull that shadow up into here a little bit, so that this top area right through here has a little bit of shadow on it. And what that will do is that will create a nice depth to the model, where you've got the shade at these lower parts here, but also at the further back parts as well. Okay, so I'm going to start right back here in this corner, right back in here. Okay. Add your paint, and then remember, back and forth, pushing into the color. And where you want it to be. And next week when I, on the 25th, when I start talking a little bit about two-brush blending large areas. One of the things I'm going to talk about then is when you two-brush blend larger areas, you do want that brush potentially a little, the blending brush, excuse me, potentially a little more moist than you would have on a smaller area. Remember, two-brush blending is all about brush control, all about moisture control rather, and so when you're working over those larger areas, you need to be able to keep it moist just a little bit longer. Okay. You see how that's looking on the side there? Alright, so we'll kind of do the same thing over here now. Swishing back and forth, pushing into the color, and then slowly pulling back out. You start swishing back and forth with your brush before the surface of where the shade color meets the base color. What you're trying to do is establish a moistened area that paint can blend into, and it helps keep that edge soft and wet so that you don't get any drying rings. Sometimes when you get around tight places like this handle right here, you've got to improvise just a little bit. But that's the thing about two-brush blending, is it's actually really a forgiving technique. Okay, so looking at the top there, we can kind of see that the shadow is just a little bit uneven. I need to kind of build this one out a little more right there, but from the side I'm probably going to add a little more too right there, and then once this side dries up a bit more, kind of the same thing right there as well. So I'm going to let that top kind of sit for a second while it's drying, and I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the crest on the bottom, and we're going to emphasize the shadow along the bottom here and have it lighten as it comes up. Okay, and we'll start right here in this corner and pull up, start here in this corner, pull up as well. Make sure I stay in camera there, sorry about that. Sorry about the pop on the mic there, I dropped my brush right on top of it, sorry about that guys. So this is a little too much paint, so what I'm using the brush to do right now is take some of that excess paint off so that it's not quite so dark. There we go, that's better. That's a nice color combination, man. It pops really good. I like the blue to the green. That looks good. Definitely be a unique army when you get it done, man. And I think that the galleon I'm going to paint for you as well will be pretty nice. Okay, start right about there. Okay, and so when we look at that bottom crest right there, looks pretty good. Bring the light around a little more here. There we go, that's better. Alright, so that's looking pretty good on the shading there. Let's come back up to the top now and kind of focus on building out that area a little more that I'd mentioned earlier. Alright, that's looking better. And we're going to add a little more to the side here, about right here. looking pretty good. And when you're two-brush blending, just make sure to work quickly. That dot of paint that you drop down of where you want your shadow to be or where you want your highlight to be. Remember, don't let it sit too long because you don't want it to dry with the bathtub ring, as it's sometimes known. All right. So that's looking pretty good. You can see how that's turning out. And as far as the blue goes on this piece here, you know, I think we're pretty much done. I don't think I want to go too much darker. The only other thing I might consider doing, or you might consider doing, Chris, when you get going on your own stuff, is take a little bit of the Exile blue right here, mix it with a dot of black, okay, just to get yourself a nice darker blue, and you know, just follow right along this edge right here. And we talked a little bit about that last time. That's called black lining. In fact, we'll probably do a little bit of it right now, actually, or here in a second. So that's more or less the blue there. Now, if you look here, let me kind of zoom in and show you something here. Let me get my zoom button pulled up for my camera. Okay, I'm tightening up there. And let me come closer here. Okay, so you can see a little bit of a bathtub ring right in there. Okay, it's really faint. So the way we're going to get rid of that, once this dries a little more, is by glazing some of the original color back on. Okay, and that'll also soften a little bit of the contrast that you're seeing there as well, and just make that blend look a little smoother all the way around. So we'll get to that though in a second. I want to let this dry for a bit before we move on. But I got plenty of other parts here to work with. In fact, let me just kind of show you this real quick. See how far I can get the camera to zoom out here. Take a look here. That's your Centurion right there. Just going to take a minute to talk about how I paint miniatures, how I paint jacks in particular. And you'll notice that I've got everything on toothpicks here. Okay, all your pieces have been assembled and placed on these toothpicks. The reason why I do it this way, Chris, is because it makes it a lot easier to get to all the different places to paint. Okay, it does kind of slow things down as far as playing goes. I mean, it's a little hard to play with a jack that's in pieces like this. But what you can do is, you know, get the main body assembled, get the legs painted and assembled, and use that just as a proxy, you know, until you finish getting all these other parts assembled. But the big thing that painting a large based jack or beast this way does is it allows you to get into all the tight places, so you're not trying to finagle your brush into a tight area. Gives you plenty of space to work with. It gives you plenty of opportunity to get those places that would sometimes be missed. To me, I think that's what adds to an overall clean look of an army, is when everything is painted, okay, and all those details are covered. And the way that I do this is, these are just toothpicks. This is a piece of battle foam right here. This was a plug to one of the trays that I got a couple years ago. Okay, you can see I've stuffed toothpicks into it a lot over the years. But I've just taken a 1/8 inch drill, pin vise, and I just drill right into there, and then I just jam the toothpick up there. I don't glue it in. It's just jammed in there and wedged in tight, and that'll hold it while you're painting it. Okay, and then as we had talked about, I had airbrushed the base colors onto here because I didn't want to waste time on video just base coating by brush. You felt like you were good with that, and we didn't need to move on, or didn't need to cover that. So that's how I assembled everything here to paint today, was just on these pieces like that, and it'll allow us to get into a lot more tight places. So what I want to do now is I want to actually just real quickly switch over to my airbrush camera, and I'm going to, let me just show it to you guys real quick. If you take a look at my airbrush station, right there you can see the legs there for the Centurion on the base. I'm going to real quickly just base coat those legs so that those can start drying. And I just wanted to take a minute and start talking a little bit about airbrushing for a minute, just so that people who are interested in getting into it in the future can understand kind of how the process works. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, Chris, because I don't want to detract from what we're working on for you today. But I figured since those legs still needed to be base coated, it was a good idea to kind of do that. So I'm going to slide my chair over here now to my airbrushing station. I've already got my air compressor turned on and going. Bring some light over here. Let me see here. Get a good cast of light there so the shadow isn't too harsh. I'm still working on figuring out the best way to set everything up for airbrushing, and so far this is about as good as I've gotten. I have some lights on order that I'll attach to my spray booth that will help with some of what we're seeing here. Real quick too, I wanted to show you before I get going on the arms, or on the legs. These are the shoulders here. Okay, I had airbrushed them the base cream color that you're going to be using for your army, but the outside shoulders here I wanted to actually be the teal color. So a good way to mask paint or mask areas when you're airbrushing is with silly putty, believe it or not. So I'm just going to take a glob of silly putty. This is going to be off camera for a second, and just wedge it over the area that I've painted so that no overspray gets on there. And there you go. You can see now that I've got some silly putty wedged on there covering the Cygnar emblem and shield that's going to stay white, and then that whole area there that you see is going to be done in the base coat of the teal green, the blue green color. So we'll do the same thing again on this guy. And I'm just wedging the silly putty around the edge, and if it's not a perfectly clean mask, that's okay, because I can go back in with a brush and clean it up. But now you can see that one, that's set as well and ready to go. So the two colors, again, going back to what we've talked about for the base coats for your army, are about 2 parts Meredith blue to 1 part warm green, and that's what gives us the nice teal color. I have 2 airbrushes. My primary airbrush that I use for all my work is a Iwata Eclipse dual action airbrush. You guys can hear it there running. And that's my workhorse. That's the one that gets all the work done for me. I also use a second one, an Infinity, Harder and Steinbeck Infinity, and that one does a lot of work for me as well. I use that one more for detail type works. Now when I mix paints, I use a little mixing cup. Get it into the camera there. And we're going to be covering a large area here. If you're just starting out airbrushing, I recommend using mixing more paint than what you think you're going to need. So I'm going to go with about 4 drops right now. Of the Meredith blue, and a 5th one just to make sure. And then that's going to be to about 2 drops of the worm green. And we'll mix that up and see how that looks. I also use Vallejo airbrush thinner. Okay. And I mix my paint at probably about a 60% ratio. In other words, 40% paint, 60% thinner. Or until it's the consistency that I like. I know that's very vague, especially for people who aren't familiar with airbrushing. But as you get more experienced with it, you will understand what how thin or thick the paint needs to be in order for you to get the work, the effect that you want. You can see right now the way that that's looking as I mix it. That's about right. That's maybe a touch thin, but that's okay. I don't mind. I'd rather have the paint a little thin rather than a little thick. So I'm going to go ahead and load that into my airbrush, and we're going to start spraying. And this is really only my second time airbrushing underneath the camera, so bear with me, guys. One thing you notice right away with how I'm airbrushing is the coat is fairly thin. In other words, you can still see a lot of that primer underneath, and that's the whole point. You don't want your first coat or two to be completely solid. Doing that is going to cause a lot more problems for you. That's going to cause a lot of paint buildup. That's going to cause a lot of runs in the paint, things like that. I need to turn my hood on here, guys, so it's going to get a little loud for a second, but I don't think it'll be too bad. You should still be able to hear me just fine. And see, you can see that I've got to kind of hold the Mini at some odd angles here as I'm airbrushing it. And that's one of the reasons why I don't fully assemble warjacks and beasts when I'm painting them, because it's really hard to get in there if you don't have it's really hard to get into some of these tight spots if that miniature is fully assembled. Alright, that's looking pretty good. And the way it's looking on the screen right now, it looks like the paint is barely covered as far as how thin the coat is, but I can assure you guys it's actually pretty darn complete at this point. The color is almost got a full coat on it right now. In fact, what I'll do when I'm done here is I'll bring it over to my painting station where the lighting is a bit better, and you guys can have a better look at it. I won't be doing any two-brush blending on this Chris today, because I do like to let it dry for about 24 hours or so before I start doing more work on it. That just prevents any of the paint reactivating as I'm working on it. Okay, set that aside, and I think I'm about out of paint. Yep, I'm out of paint right there, so I'll have to cover those guys a little bit later. But let me just show you guys a couple of things. For cleaning your airbrush, this is what I use. It's just an airbrush cleaning pot. Okay. Your nozzle slides right inside there. Okay. And as you run your cleaner through the cup on the top, it can collect inside of it to prevent any excess paint from getting all over your table or whatnot. So I'm just going to clean this out real quick. If you guys have any questions about airbrushing, go ahead and throw them up in the chat room right now. When I get to the end of this broadcast, I will definitely answer them. take that time to do that. I use an old brush as I've got the cleaner in the pot, and I work the needle back and forth a few times and swirl that brush around in there, picking up, cleaning off any of the old paint that's collected on the side. Once my cleaner is run through, I'll then just take some regular deionized water or filtered water and then just run that through the cup once, and then that's clean enough for a quick painting session like this. After I do a really heavy painting session, you know, several miniatures or a couple hours, I'll do a much more thorough cleaning. But for something just quick like that, just running water through a couple times, running your cleaner through a couple times is about all you need to do. It's pretty, airbrushes are pretty durable. You don't need to worry. Even if your paint dries in the cup or on the needle, you don't need to worry about it damaging your brush. Just getting it cleaned up, you know, giving it a soak in the cleaner for an hour, running it through a ultrasonic cleaner, you know, things like that. It'll bring it back to new, and you won't even know you ever had a problem. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my painting station camera and show you guys what the result is from that airbrushing. And voila, you can see it's actually a solid coat. Okay. So I need to get some better lighting over there under my booth, but it'll come with time. So there you go. So this will sit now for a bit, okay, and then Chris, I will be doing the shading and highlighting on this one as well once it's dry and ready to go. So let's move on now. Torso's done. We can work on the shield a bit, okay. Making a note real quick to myself. So here's the shield. Now you'll notice underneath there, this is going to be something to point out from like that silly putty that I used. I had painted this shield white and then silly puttied this area here and then painted the green on top. Okay, and you'll look underneath here, you can see all that white there. This is a good opportunity for black lining. Okay, if you can take some of that Exile blue and with that touch of black in it and put that up in there, it'll actually do quite a bit for this shield. Now what we want to do as far as shading goes on the shield, okay, kind of the same thing we were doing on the Cygnar body. Okay, we're going to want this back edge here and then this back edge here to have the shadow, and then as it comes up onto here, this is where our highlight's going to be. Okay, so my Exile blue is all but dried up, so I got to get some more mixed up here. Grab it off my wall. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start right here at this base area right in here. And then I'm going to kind of pull back around in here too. Pull this shadow back on this other side. And that left a little bit of a ring there, so I'm going to have to clean that up. Oh, and I'm off camera, sorry guys. Okay, and then we'll come back to this other side now. Left a little bit of a ring there too. But here's the thing though, when it comes to painting, guys, you can't, when you make a mistake like that, or when you have something that turns out not exactly like you thought it would, don't let that discourage you. Take advantage of that opportunity. Take advantage of that mistake, if you even want to call it that. And figure out, what do I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because mistakes are going to happen. I mean, nobody is a perfect painter. That's looking better. Clean that up right there. There we go. Gonna have to do the same thing over here now. Just start building this shadow up on the bottom there. And like we've talked about in other videos, Chris, you always pull your color in the direction that you want it to go, so that where you lift up your brush at the end of your stroke is where the paint's going to be the darkest or most concentrated. Pull towards your shadow or your highlight. Pull your shadow towards where you want the shadow to be. Pull your highlight towards where you want your highlight to be. Okay. There we go. As far as I want to take that. Okay. Let's see here. Let's grab some arms. That's going to be a good one to show some techniques on. All right, got the arm here, and you're probably going to want to have a shadow right along this edge, right there, where that metal and the base color meets. So I'm just going to pull that right there. Work that down into there. Okay. Same thing on the other side now. Move that out of my way. It's kind of getting in the way of my hand. And if you go over an area that you've painted already with your shadow color here, that's fine. And just reapply the base coat. It happens. Okay. Then on the inside here, same thing. Although you could probably be a little more heavy-handed with the shade color here on the inside, Chris, since this part is going to all be in shadow when you're done. side. Some of those new announcements from Privateer Press this week was pretty cool. What's his name? Dernst, the new Minoth Warcaster. I'm pretty excited about that guy, being a Minoth player myself. Paladin Warcaster. It's going to make a bad day for people without magic weapons, let me tell you. Who knows what his stats are yet, but I freaking love the model. Where can I take my money at? That's what I want to know. Okay. Sidearm's about done as far as the blue goes. I'll take a break from the other arm. Let's talk about the head for a minute. We're going to want it to be shadowed at the back, light at the front. Okay. And then what we're also going to have to do is add some paint here in the eye to create the glow effect. Yeah, the Minion Cavalry solo, he does look pretty cool. Something about it reminds me of Star Wars. I don't know what it is. Okay. Other side now. Head's about done. Okay, let's come back to this other arm here. We'll get this arm done now. Also, if you guys have questions on two brush blending too, feel free to post them up in the chat, and when we get to the end of this broadcast, I can answer those as well. I like to answer the questions at the end as opposed to in the middle while I'm doing it. Sometimes it's a little easier. Okay. And as far as the blue pieces that we have now, that's about it. Just taking a closer look at the shield here now that it's dried. I think we're okay on that. I think it looks good. So let's talk about some white pieces now. Okay, let's move on to the white ones. We've got about well, we're at about an hour now. So actually, what I'll do, Chris, is I'm going to go ahead and stop this one for now on the blue. Okay, I'm going to continue the stream. I'm just going to stop recording for a second and then start back up with the white, and we'll call that one Centurion Part 2, where I start talking in on the white. And for the blue, we'll leave that done. I like to keep the broadcast to about an hour, so that way, or at least when I post them to YouTube, that way they're a little more manageable for people to view.